In today's wood story, we are turning this inexpensive piece of rustic pine into multiple really fun fall decor projects that you can easily sell or keep on your porch. So go grab your tools and let's start this wood story. For the first project, I started by tracing a template I made onto a rustic pine board. I made all of today's templates completely free for you to enjoy, so go and grab those from my website. The link is down in the description. Once the shape was traced, I cut the large board into smaller sizes, just to make it easier when I get over on the bandsaw. I then used some double-sided tape to connect the two pieces together so that I would save time when cutting these on my bandsaw. The lengthiest part of this project is for sure cutting this shape. But by doubling them up, you're gonna save some time. Now, a bandsaw is absolutely great for cutting these, but you can of course also get away with a jigsaw with a scrolling blade. That's also a really good option. I just like to get into the zone and listen to a good audiobook while I'm in the shop, especially when I have to cut something lengthy like this. I'm currently listening to The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and I had honestly forgotten how funny this book is. So I highly recommend it, and it certainly made time go by a lot quicker. But if you have any audiobook recommendations for me, then please send them my way, because I usually go through a book a week while in the shop. So that just took a couple of minutes to cut out over on the bandsaw, and by doubling them up, it was twice as fast. Possibly you could have done all four of them together. I wasn't willing to chance this, but maybe depending on what kind of blade you are using. But definitely if you are using any kind of hardwood, then you might even just want to do one at a time. So easy to disassemble now, depending on where you put your paper. So just go ahead and remove that. And then next is going to be shaping before we start to assemble these fun parts. We will still need to cut one more thing because we need a top and a bottom for all of these to connect to. But that will not take long at all. I am using a round over bit over on my router to route both sides of each of the pumpkin shapes. Now I am avoiding the inside, this is just on the outside, but that's gonna give the pumpkin shape a nice curved edge. So if you want to make it super rustic, you can absolutely avoid this step, but if you want a little bit more of a curve, then you can go ahead and do this too. I made a quick 3-inch circle using some of my leftover wood that I glued onto another board so that I would have two, and then I went ahead and proceeded to cut this circle out over on the bandsaw. We're gonna need this piece as part of the assembly. So now that these are ready to be assembled, I have just grabbed some 1/4-inch little dowels, and I'm gonna use these to drill into it so that I can connect them. You can of course also just glue them, but this is going to give it some extra support. So what I'm gonna do is I've cut them up in two originally, and I'm taking the matching pair, and I am making sure that the shorter end is at the top and the wider one is in the bottom, because the template is slightly different, so pay attention to that. And then I'm just gonna line them up like this together, because we want them to obviously align when we put them together afterwards. And I do have fancy doweling jigs, but it's really hard to do on such small surfaces. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna line them up like this, and then I'm just gonna use a square, and then I'm just going to, while I keep them together, make a mark down the middle, like that. Because that way, at least if I drill it on that same line, they're going to connect at the same spot. I did the same thing on the other side, and then I drilled out the two holes for the dowel, and then I connected the two pieces together using the dowel and some wood glue as well. And I allowed it to dry with a clamp, of course. With the one side done, it was time to connect the other side, which is a little bit more tricky, but definitely not impossible. I decided to use first some CA glue and activator to act as a clamp, because this allowed me to then nail in some brad nails from the back side without it shifting all over the place. Now for the other side, I also first connected it with CA glue and activator, but I no longer had a place to nail it from because the other shape was already on the other side. So this is where those handy little circles comes into play. I used some wood glue and then I glued these little circles on the inside of the pumpkin to the top and to the bottom. But this way I could now shoot in some brad nails to fully secure all of the shape together. And as a finishing touch, I added a little nub to the top. Then I decided to paint it with some orange spray paint, followed by a walnut stain just to give it that nice but orange rustic pumpkin look. And with that done, it was time to move on to project number 2. For this project, you're gonna start by cutting out your shapes. I just cut mine out over on the laser, but you can of course also use a regular printer and then just tape them together and cut them to size. So with this in mind and using our board, which is 10 feet wide, I am going to line these up and I'm going to trace them again. And then I am once again going to cut them over on the bandsaw. And when this is done, then you're gonna have multiple connecting pieces like this that are gonna sit on top of each other like this. And it's gonna create a really fun 3D effect that will be really nice for your porch. So let's get started on this one now. So the pieces are now cut out and it's gonna create a really cool effect when we add them all together. It's gonna look something like this, but to add a little bit more depth to it, I am going to go ahead and add a routered edge on all the outside edges. Don't do the bottom though, because we want that to be down at the bottom like this, but all of the sides around here, just use a little round over bit all the way around, and it's gonna create a extra little nice effect. And while we're here at the router table, you may notice this little screw right here. This is a router table start pin. Now yours may look a little different. Perhaps it came with your router or it has a little silicone sleeve on it. Either way, it is a key safety feature whenever you are routering small items such as these, because it allows you to safely start the cut and limits the risk of the piece going around the router bit itself, potentially dragging your fingers with you. If any of you have followed my channel so far, you know that I am a huge fan of anything that can make woodworking safer, and I am constantly learning. So if you have any tips or tricks for making routering safer to do, then please share them in the comments below. Before assembling the pieces, I decided to paint mine white because white pumpkins are really popular right now. I used some regular white paint that I thinned to make more of a milk paint. This will allow for a more rustic look. And once the pieces were dry, I couldn't resist adding a little bit of lasering to the front, but this is of course completely optional. After that, it's really just gluing the pieces together and allowing them to dry before enjoying this bubble pumpkin on your porch. And with that done, let's move on to project number 3. So in the beginning of this project, we had to cut down some very large circles, and from that came several large pieces of leftover wood. These are those pieces, so hopefully you didn't throw them away. It is important to note that for this 3D pumpkin that we're making, the template is based on wood that is exactly 15/16 in thickness. If the wood you're using is thinner or wider, you will need to adjust the template or the connecting parts are not going to work. I traced the template, but this time I decided to use my laser. And then I proceeded to, well, you probably guessed it, cut the pieces on my bandsaw. Now please take extra care when you are cutting the connecting parts, because you want those to be as straight as possible in order to achieve that seamless look. I decided to leave these rustic 3D pumpkins in their natural color and just slightly sand the edges before connecting them. And with that done, it was finally time to decorate my porch with all of these fun new fall decor items. Now I just need a bench to sit on. If only I knew a woodworker who could make me one. Thank you so much for watching. Happy fall, y'all, and cheers to all of those pumpkin spice lattes, leaf falling, and sweater days ahead. And don't forget to grab the free templates on my website and let me know what part of fall is your favorite. I'll see you soon in the next Wood Story.